Hi all, welcome to CodAffection. This is my fifth video in this series of complete React Material UI tutorial. In previous videos, we have discussed the basics of Material UI and we have designed the form and done the validation and finally submitted the form. Corresponding records are inserted into local storage. Now in this tutorial, we will list all of the records that we have inserted previously into this Material UI table here. Along with that, we have implemented paging, sorting and filter operation. We have discussed everything in great detail from scratch. So I hope you will find this tutorial helpful for your upcoming React projects. So please watch till the end of this tutorial. All of the video links in this series will be given in video description and inside the first comment of the video. Before starting this video, I would like to thank for your PayPal donations for my previous works. In order to make more helpful and quality tutorials like this, you can also support me through PayPal donation. I have given the link in video description and inside the first comment of the video. Without further ado, let's get started with the topic. So here we have the same project that we have left from our previous tutorial, in which we have discussed how to validate a React Material UI form, and we have inserted a new employee inside the form submit event. As of now, with this form submit event, we have inserted 8 employees into local storage. Now let's look how we can show this list of employees inside Material UI table with paging, sorting and filtering. As you know, for the demonstration purpose inside the series, we have been using this employee context. Basically here we have two components: employee form for designing the form that we have done in previous tutorials, and here we have the parent component employees, where we have to work with list of employees. So this employee form component tag is responsible for the form here. Now let me comment that here. Now let's look how we can show Material UI table here. Inside this Material UI documentation here, you could see various examples on using this component table here. First of all, inside this application here, I will show you how you can show a list of employees inside Material UI table. After that, we will be adding rest of the features like sorting, filtering and paging. If you have watched our previous videos on form design, you know we have been using a lot of reusable components for designing form and form controls. For example, here we have the use form component function. Inside that, we have defined various reusable component and functions which can be reused in future. Like that, we are going to create a reusable component for Material UI table. So I will create the component here. Use table. Here we have the functional component. For this component, we have only two parameters: records and head cells. List of records can be passed with this parameter records, and with the second parameter here, we will be passing an object containing column configurations. For now, from this function, we will be returning an object, empty object like this. Inside this component, first of all, I will define a child component, TBL container. So this will be a wrapper for the entire Material UI table. So basically this will be a function with single parameter props. From this function, we just need to return a table component. So we just need to have this pair of parentheses, and inside that we have to return this table component which is there inside Material UI. So this is the parent component for the entire Material UI table. Now from this use table component here, we'll just return this child component TBL container. Now back to this employees component here. First of all, let's import that reusable component here. Now let's call the component here use table. From this function, we have returned this TBL container here. Now we can access that with the constant here. So we'll be using this destructive syntax here. In order to access that child component TBL container, we just need to do this. Now we can use the component here TBL container. So this is basically a table like we have returned from here. Inside this component, we have to have the head and body part of the table. First of all, let's add list of employees inside the table body. For that, we can have this component table body from material UI. We have stored list of employees inside the application local storage that you can see if you inspect the web page here. Just go to the application tab here. So here we have the list of employees that we have inserted through the form. Now let's look how we can retrieve those records. In order to work with this list of data, we have created a separate file here under this folder services employee service. Inside that we have already defined a function get employees. Now we just need to call this function get employees inside the employees component here. So first of all, let's add the import statement here. There are a lot of functions inside the file, so I will import all of them with this alias employee service. In order to show these list of employees, I'm going to define a component state object here, records, and the corresponding function will be set records. Now let's call the React hook function use state. Inside the function, we can initialize this array records here. For that, we just need to call the function here get all employees from employee service. Now inside this records array, we have all of the employees that we have inserted. Now let's show all of those records inside this table here. For that, we are going to iterate through the array here. Records map function can be called. Inside that, we have this callback function with this single parameter item. From this function, we just need to return a single component table row, which is from material UI. Now let's add TD cell for each information of employee. So corresponding to TD cell, we have this component table cell. First of all, let's show the full name of the employee. So item.fullname. Now let me duplicate this 2 times. This is for email and this is for mobile. In React, when we render a list of components like this inside an iteration, we have to have this attribute key. It should have a unique value. For that, inside this employee record itself, we have the ID property, which is corresponding to the primary key. So item.id. Now we have an error here. Use state is not defined. So let's import that here. Use state. So far inside this table container here, we have added this table body here. In order to show this table body inside this table that we have inside the reusable component here, we have to add this attribute props.children. So which refers to all of the elements that we have inside the table container here. All of the elements inside these 2 tags table container can be accessed with this property children inside this props parameter here. Now let me save this and back to the application. Boom. So here we have the full name, email and mobile. We can add the table header in a bit. Before that, we want to show the department. In order to show the department, we have to do some additional works because inside the form here, employee form, let me uncomment this. Corresponding to the department, we have shown a select control. When we select a department from this control, corresponding department ID is saved into the data storage. In order to show the department title, we have to do the reverse operation. Let's check that inside this employee service here. We have populated this department control with this array for department here. And the actual employee records are saved inside local storage as an array. In a practical application, we'll be dealing with these 2 tables, employees and department, and we'll be having a foreign constraint in between them. Here we have to find the corresponding department for the department ID that we have saved inside the property department ID. That we can do inside the function get all employees while retrieving all of the records. So first of all, I will store the employee record inside an object employees here. Now here we have to map the department ID to department title. For that, first of all, we will retrieve all of the departments here. For that, we just need to call this function get department collection. Now we are going to iterate through this employee array here. So employees.map function can be called here. Here we have the callback function. Inside that we just need to return an object. So we will do this. So basically inside this parameter x, we will be having an object corresponding to the employee. So first of all, I will be using this separator operator here, and then I will add this extra property department here. Now into this department property, we have to save the corresponding department for the department ID that we can access from this departments array here. Inside this, we have to pass the index of the object. In this particular case, there is a relation between department ID and the index of the object inside the array. Index will be less than 1 that of the department ID. So I will do this employee department ID -1. So this will return the corresponding department object from this array. From that, we just need to have this title. So dot title. This will return the updated list of employees with the new property department. Now we just need to return that here. Return. So by calling this function get employees inside the employees component here, we have also included the department here. Now we just need to add one more table cell for department here. Department. So here we have the corresponding department for the department ID. Now let me comment this form again here. In next video, we will be showing this form in a pop-up dialog or model pop-up. Now let's show the table header. For that, inside this reusable component, I will be adding a new child component TBL head. So this is also a React component function with single parameter props. From this function, we are going to return the table head component from material UI. So let's return that here, table head. This material UI component is similar to the T head that we used to have in HTML table. Before showing head cells, we have to have a row. So we will add this table row here. Now inside this row, we have to have table cell component for each column head. Before that, we have to pass values for these parameters, records and head cells inside this employees component function. The first parameter records can be passed from this same object records here. The second parameter head cells actually expect an object with column configurations. So I will define that object up here. Head cells. Actually, it is an array of objects. For each column, we will be having an object here. So first of all, we have full name column. So I will be adding this ID here, full name. So this label will be shown in table header. And the ID is used to identify the column uniquely. Employee name. Like this, we have to have 3 more columns. Email, mobile, department. For now, this is an array of objects with 2 parameters, ID and label. So as per the customization required, we will be adding properties inside this array of objects. For now, this is enough. Now let's pass that here, head cells. Now back to this component TBL head here. To show the table header cells here, we just need to iterate through the list of array that we have passed inside the property head cells. So we can do this head cells dot map function can be called. Inside that we have a callback function with single parameter head cell. From this function, we just need to return this component table cell. Now inside this, we just need to show this property label from this array of objects here. Head cell dot label. Since we are rendering these collections of table cells here, we have to add this key property with the unique value that we can provide from this ID parameter here. So head cell dot ID. Now from this component, we can return this TBL head here. Let's access the same while calling the function here, TBL head. Now just above this table body, we just need to show that TBL head. Back to the application, boom. So here we have shown the table header. Now let's add some custom CSS to this table here that we can do inside this reusable component table container, TBL container here. So first of all, let's define the CSS here. In first and second video, we have discussed how to deal with Material UI component customization. So first of all, we will be defining this function use styles, and we can call this function make styles from Material UI. Inside that we have this function with single parameter theme. From this function, we just need to return an object like this. For now, I will paste the CSS rule for the table here. Here we have applied some top margin. Here we have customized the table heading, changed font weight inside the table data. And finally, here we have the styles when we hover on table rows. Now inside this component, let's call that function classes is equal to use styles function can be called. To apply this rule table into this table here, we could do this class name classes dot table. Now we can make use of this reusable component across our application TBL container, and thereby we can have these same styles across our application. Now let's look how we can implement paging inside this Material UI table. For that, first of all, inside this reusable component, let's add some state variables. First of all, we have this constant array pages. Inside that, we have number of records that we are going to display inside the table based on our paging configuration. Now we need a component state property page and corresponding function set page, and we can initialize that with this function use state. In order to use this function, first of all, we have to import that here. That's done. Inside this page property, we'll be having the index from the current selected page. So I will initialize this property with 0 here. Now we need one more property, rows per page, and corresponding set function set rows per page. Inside this property, we'll be saving the value of the options selected from the array. 5, 10 and 25 will be saved inside this property rows per page. So let's call the function use state here. And inside that we can pass the index from this page property. For showing paging controls, we can have this child component TBL pagination, and from that we just need to return this component table pagination. Into this component we have to pass these properties rows per page options. So here we have to pass the array with paging configuration, which is here inside the pages array. So pages, we want to show this component as a div, so we can specify this property component is equal to div. With this count property, we have to pass the number of records inside the table. So records dot length. Then we have to pass rows per page that we can pass from the state property here, rows per page. Then we have to pass the selected page option from the drop down that we can pass from this page property. Now let's return this component here. Now let's retrieve the same here. Let's add the same after this table container here. Let me save this back to the application. So here we have the controls for pagination. With these controls here, we can change the current page back and forth. During that time, we have to change this property page here. That we can do with this event on change page event. For that, here we have the function handle change page. Let's define the function here. For this function, we have two parameters, event. So the new page index will be there inside this property. Now we just need to update the state property by calling this function set page. Inside that we can pass the property new page. Now we have to update this property value rows per page when we change the option from this drop down here on change rows per page. So here is the corresponding function handle change rows per page. Let's define the function here. Here we only have one parameter event. Inside that, let's update this property value rows per page. So we can call this function set rows per page. Newly selected option value will be there inside this event parameter here. So we can do this. Parse in function can be called. Into that we can pass this event dot target value. Since we use decimal numeric system, we can pass 10 as a second parameter here to this function parse int. Inside official Material UI documentation, they already have an example with paging and sorting. Inside this tutorial, we are explaining how it works in a practical project. After selecting an option from this drop down here, we have to show the first page. So we will update the page property like we have done here. Let me copy this and paste in here. So index will be 0. Now with these controls, we can change the paging configuration. In background, these properties, page and rows per page will be updated. At the same time, we only have to show the records here as per our configuration here. For that, I will define a new function here, records after paging and sorting. So inside this function, we will be handling both sorting and paging. So this function is expected to return the records as per our current paging and sorting. So we can do this return. So as per the current configuration, we only have to show the 5 records inside the first page here. Inside this records property, we have all of the records. From that, we can call this slice function. So this slice function returns a copy of the array or subset of the array with the start and end index. To understand how this paging works, you can check this out. So basically we have a drop down with these values 5, 10, 25, and corresponding selected option value will be saved inside the property rows per page, and we will be having 2 controls for changing pages back and forth, and corresponding page index will be saved inside the property page. So currently we are inside the first page, so page index will be 0, and we have selected this option from the drop down, so rows per page will be 5. In our example here, we have 8 employees. So here is the corresponding array representation from starting index 0 up to 7. Now using slice function, we are going to select the current page records from this array here. Into this function, we just need to pass 2 parameters, start and end index. So the records from start index up to end index will be selected without including this end index record. Now the start index can be found out from this equation here, page index into rows per page count. In this case, 0 into 5. So 0. The equation for this end index will be p plus 1 into records per page. So 0 plus 1 into 5, so 5. So inside the first page, so here we have the first page, starting index is 0, so from 0 up to 5. So without including the record at 5th index, so records from index 0 to 4 will be there inside the first page, and that of second page will be something like this, 1 into 5, so 5, then 1 plus 1 into 5, so 2 into 5, 10, so we'll be having 8, 9, 10. For now we only have a course up to 7 index, so this will be P2, this will be P1. So let's do the same inside the function here, page into rows per page, and for the end index, page plus 1 into rows per page. So after this slice operation, we will be returning the records inside the current page. Now let's pass this function here. Now let's access the same here. Now instead of iterating through all of the records inside the array, we can use the return array from this function, records after paging and sorting. Let me save this and back to the application here. Currently we are inside the first page, so we have shown the first 5 records. Now let's move to the second page. So we have shown the records 6th, 5th and 8th. So this is what happens during paging, sorting or filter operation. There will be corresponding state properties here. We will be updating that property, and when we update the state variables or object, the entire React component will be reloaded, and thereby this function records after paging and sorting will be called. So that's how the view is updated after changing paging configuration. Alright, now let's discuss how to deal with sorting in Material UI table. For that, inside this reusable component use table, let's add two more state variables. So first of all, we have order and the corresponding set function set order. So inside this property, we'll be saving the order of the sorting, whether it is ascending or descending. We'll be saving the abbreviation ASCC and DESC. And we need one more property, order by, and the corresponding set function set order by. Inside this property, we'll be having the column ID on which we have made the sorting recently. As you know, in order to sort these records based on any of these columns here, user want to click on any of these column header here. Currently, we have shown this column header as a label directly from this label property here. If we want to enable sorting for these column headers, we have to use the component table sort label. We have shown the table header with this component TBL head. So let's enclose this column header inside table sort label component. Table sort label component. Now we have shown the column header inside the table sort label component. That's why you could see these sort directions here. Now let's add on-click event to this component here. Here we have to call a function with a parameter. So we have to do that inside another function like this. A function without any parameter. Inside that we can call this function handle sort request. Into this function we have to pass this ID property in order to identify the column. And now let's define this function inside this child component here with one single parameter cell ID. Inside the function, first of all, we have to update the column on which we are going to sort this table. So we can do this. Set order by column function can be called. Into that we have to pass this column ID, and then we have to change the sort direction. For that, first of all, we will have this boolean property is async to check whether the current sort direction is ascending or not. For that, we have to check two conditions. We'll check whether the sorting is based on current column ID or not. So we can check that inside this cell ID here, and then we have to check the current sorting direction, whether it is async or not. If these both cell IDs are same and the current sorting is in ascending, and then we will set this property as true. Now we can update this order by property by calling this function set order. If currently we are in ascending order, we will toggle that to descending, else we will update that with ascending. So initially, if we click on any of these columns for the first time, so then it will sort these records on this column in ascending order. That's what we meant by this condition along with this order ascending. Now let's set the direction of sorting here by this property direction. First of all, we will check the order by property with the current column ID. If both are same, then we can set the order of sorting from this property order. By default, it will be in ascending order. Let me save this back to the application. Inside the click event, we have updated the properties order and order by. In order to identify the column on which we have currently sorted these records, we can use this active property here. So active will set this property as true if the current column ID, if it is equal to the ID that we have inside the property order by. And thereby we can highlight the column on which we have sorted these records here. Inside the click event, we only have changed the properties order and order by. Now we have to do the actual sorting on these table records here. That we can do inside the function that we have created here, records after paging and sorting. So before this paging function slice, I will call another function sort. Into this function, as a first parameter, I will pass this array of records. As a second parameter, I will pass another function get comparator. Into this function, we have to pass these two properties, order and order by. Now let's define those two functions here. First of all, we have the function sort with these two parameters. First of all, we have the record array and then the function for comparison comparator. Actually, I'm using the same function that is mentioned inside the Material UI documentation. I will just define how it works here. So first of all, let me paste the function here. We have created this array from the records array that we have passed to this function sort. We will call the map function from that. Here we have returned the tuple with the record object and the corresponding record index. Here we have the default array function sort. Since we have two functions with same name, so I will rename this function as stable sort. Let me update the same here. So this is a default function for JavaScript array which is mentioned here. Basically, it sort in ascending order with this UTF code system. In our case, we have used a function here because the default sort won't work with an array of objects. That's why we have the provision for passing this function compare function. So that's what we have done here. So both of these A and B represent a tuple that we have created here. And inside the tuple first index, we have the object or the record object. That's why we have passed the index 0 to the comparator function here. This comparator function can return three values: -1, 0, 1. -1 means we have to switch the tuples that we are comparing right now. 0 means both of them have the same value, and if it returns 1, the records are in proper order. So far we have not yet defined this get comparator function that is passed to this parameter here. So first of all, let's define the function here. Along with that, we have to define this function descending comparator. From these if statements, we will return 1 if b is greater than 1, otherwise -1. If they are equal, it will return 0. So the exact value will be returned to this function called here. Otherwise, we will return the value with -1. So we will change the sign of the number. So the sorting order will be in opposite direction. Order that we have returned from this comparator function is not equal to 0. Then we will return the value from this function here. So basically it will be either 1 or -1. If it returns -1, it will swap those tuples. Otherwise, it will keep as it is. If it is 0, then the sorting will be done in the order of tuple index. And finally, here we have returned the original array without the index or the tuple. In order to fully understand this function, you have to work on your own. If you have any doubt, please ask that in comment box below. So first of all, we have done the sorting, and then we have to do the paging. Now let's look whether this sorting works or not. Boom. So the sorting works as expected. Along with passing this direction into this sort label component here, we also have to pass the same for the parent component table cell here. So sort direction is equal to, we will check the columns for the current sorting. If they are equal, we will set the current sorting order here. Otherwise, we will pass false here. So this is how we can implement sorting in a Material UI table. There might be some column in Material UI table for which you may need to disable sorting. For example, a column with action buttons like edit or delete. We will be adding such a column in next video. So for such columns, we have to disable sorting. In order to do that, we can do this inside this head cells array here. For such columns, we can pass this property disable sorting. We will set the property here true. For such columns without sorting, we don't need this component table sort label. We just need to show the label inside the header cell. So I will add this condition here. We will check the property disable sorting. If it is true, then we only have to show the label from the object. Otherwise, we can pass this component table sort label. Now we have disabled sorting for department. So this is how we can implement sorting in Material UI table. Sorry to bother you guys in middle of this discussion. Let me show you what we are going to discuss after this Material UI table in next video. We will be discussing how we can work with Material UI pop-up window or model pop-up. We have customized this component to add this title and this close button here. Currently we have opened this first form here. We could use this form to insert a new employee with this submit button. After inserting the record, this pop-up window will be automatically closed. We will use the same pop-up window for update operation also. To update a record, you can click on this pencil icon here, and thereby we have opened the form with corresponding employee details. After making required changes with this submit button, we can update the employee record. Let's look how we can implement search or filter operation. For that, we need an input control for the search operation. So I will add that just above this table here. So back to the employees component. First of all, we will have this toolbar component here. Now we have to have an input control for search. We have already defined reusable components inside these controls here. So first of all, let me import that up here. So first of all, I will import this object controls here. Inside that, I have already imported all of the form controls. So let's import all that object here, controls. Now we can do this controls.input. Inside this input control, we have all of the properties that we used to have in a normal input control. So first of all, I will pass the label here. So the label will be search employees. Now we have a normal search text box here. Into this, I want to add a search icon. For that, we have to use the property input props from this text field component here. So from this object props, all of the values for these parameters will be assigned to these properties here. We can add additional properties by having this property here. First of all, I will have this separator operator and other object. So all of the name variables from the component will be assigned to these properties here, and rest of the properties will be there inside this object other. And then we just need to separate that here. In one of my previous tutorial, I have discussed the same for this button component here. We can pass the extras here, other. Actually, it is an object here. We will pass the property input props. Inside that, we can have this property start adornment. And here we just need to pass the component input adornment. I will set the position as start. Inside this component, we can pass the search icon. Now let's add the import statement for this search icon up here. Sorry, here we don't have to pass the extra properties inside another object here. So all of the extra properties other than these properties will be there inside this other object because of this separator operator. And then the same will be extracted here. Now let me save this back to the application. Now we have shown the search icon here. I want to increase this control width. For that, I will create an extra CSS rule here. Search input width is equal to 75%. We have already defined the useStyles function here, and we have called the same, and the object classes will be there. Now we can assign the same here. Class name is equal to classes.search input. Let's do the real filter operation inside this Material UI table. We can do that inside this control on change event. We already have the event here. So here is the on change event. We will call a function handle search. Now let's define the function up here. Here we have the default event parameter. Inside this on change event, we can retrieve the values from this input control from target property inside the event parameter e here. So first of all, I will define a variable target here, e.target. For filter operation, I will define a state object here. filter function. And here is the corresponding set function, set filter function. For now, I will initialize that by just calling the function useState. Inside this property, I want to save a function for filter operation. Actually, in React state object, we don't have the privilege to store functions. So instead of that, I will do this. You can call the function here, set filter function. Inside that, we will save an object instead of function. And inside that, we have this function for filter operation. So this function has a single parameter items. Through this, we will be passing all of the records from our table. Inside that, we will do the filter operation. So first of all, we will check whether the search text box value is empty or not. In that case, we will return all of the records. Otherwise, we have to do the filter operation. So we will return the filtered array here. Items.filter function can be called here. For now, I will just look for the full name of employee here. So full name, and we will call the include function with the value that we have inside the text box, search text box. So inside this control on change event, we will update the filter function accordingly. Now we can pass the same filter function into this reusable component here. Now inside this useTable component, we can access the same here filter function. Now we will call this filter function inside this function records after paging and sorting. So instead of passing all of the records into this sort function here, we will do this. We will call the filter function here. So this is an object. Inside that, we have this function fn. Into that function, we will be passing all of the records. So this function returns the array after filter operation. And the returned array will be passed for the rest of the sort and paging operation. Now we have this error cannot read property fn of undefined. It's because we have not yet initialized the state variable filter function here. So we will do this. We will have an object. Inside that, we will have this function fn. For this function, we have a single parameter items. Through this, we will be passing all of the records required for the table. Inside this function, we will return all of the records that we have received through the parameter. So no filter operation initially. When we enter search value inside this text box, this handle search function will be invoked, and thereby the function will be updated here. Sorry, here we have passed an extra pair of curly braces. Let me save this back to the application. Now let's try few entries here. Sorry, we have a typo with the function includes. Let's correct that here. Actually, this includes function is case sensitive. So I will call the function to lowercase here. Yes, now it works as expected. So inside this input control on change event, we will just update this state here. And when we update this state, the component will be reloaded, and thereby this function will be called again, records after paging and sorting. Inside the function, we will be calling all of the three functions, search, sort, and paging in order. So that's how this page is rendered here. So that's it guys. In this video, we have discussed how to deal with Material UI table, paging, sorting, and filter operation. You can download this project source code from the GitHub link given below in video description. In next video, we will discuss how to work with Material UI pop-up window or model pop-up. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video, and for more awesome videos like this, please be subscribed to this channel CodAffection. Please share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.